This is Tell Me Something Good About Retail with Bob Phibbs, the Retail Doctor. The champion for a more human connection in retail for over 30 years as the Retail Doctor. Bob is the authority on brick-and-mortar retail across the world, who works with some of the biggest luxury brands to independent retailers of all sizes.
Today, I'm speaking with Renee Hartmann. She's a best-selling author and advisor to startups in the consumer, retail, and technology sectors. Welcome, Renee.
Thanks so much for having me, Bob.
Absolutely. Well, you are a co-author of Next Generation Retail, How to Use New Technology to Innovate for the Future. So why did you write the book? Most obvious question in the world to start with. But
It's a good question. So we wrote the book. We wrote it. It was September, summer of 2022, and so it was kind of the sort of the tail effects of COVID. We're just kind of starting to be over. People were getting back to normal, and we got approached by our publisher about really taking a look at taking stock of how the consumers changed in a post-COVID world, and how technology has really enabled a lot of those changes. So looking at kind of coming out of COVID and how retailers can use technology to leapfrog, to innovate, to address these new consumer demands and needs.
okay, nice. Well, let's take a step back. When you're getting your MBA at Duke, and by the way, you're in Portugal now. We'll hopefully touch on that. But what kind of technology was cutting edge when you were getting your MBA?
I mean, when I was getting my MBA, it was the first. I had lived in China before I went to business school, and we were texting all the time then, using SMS. And I remember when I first went to business school, that was the big thing. Was all the Americans were just learning how to text, right? It was just like, oh, I had friends that were saying, I've got a new girlfriend. She's texting me all the time. I'm not sure what to do about that. So that was the cutting edge. Was texting.
Wow, it's a little different now, huh?
Just a bit, yeah, a little bit
So
different.
so how did you get from China to Duke to Portugal? What's that journey look like?
It's been a route. I guess I've enjoyed going to new places with a lot of energy, and I think all of those have that. I spent about 10 years in China, first working with Ogilvy and Mather out of their Beijing office, doing investor relations and working with Chinese companies who are listing on Nasdaq and New York Stock Exchange. And then I did my own startup in Shanghai with former Nike China executives. We started a streetwear brand, so we made apparel. We opened up retail stores. We did e-commerce back in the early days of e-commerce. Did a lot of grassroots marketing with artists and musicians, and kind of did a little bit of everything. So it was a good kind of trial by fire. That was post my MBA of just figure things out. I was the COO. We raised funding and opened up 25 stores. So it was a good kind of way to learn about retail. I remember spending time with our VC. 4 a.m. before opening with all of us, cleaning out trash and merchandising the store. So it was a great kind of, you talk about MBA, that was a great MBA of just getting retail, really learning how to run a retail chain myself and doing everything from, manufacturing and design to retail leases and hiring and merchandising and marketing. So I learned a lot that way. And then moved back to the US for about
Wait,
10
not and
years.
then wait. And then what happened to the brand? Like we
The
sold
brand
it to Nike, or what?
it's still around. We sold it to a local partner in China, so it's still kicking around. And was a lot of like T-shirts and hoodies and graphic, accessories, things like that, but more kind of a streetwear casual brand. And then moved back to the US and have been working with brands and retailers for about 10 years on their global international strategy. So everything from east to west, brands from Asia coming into the West and brands from the West going into Asia. So a lot of branding, marketing, social media, influencer work across different platforms. So I've been able to kind of take a lot of, learnings from what's happening in Asia and bring them over to the West. Which I think did actually, inform a lot of things in the book when it comes to things like QR codes and live streaming and, omni-channel retail. It's really been pretty developed in Asia.
So
And
let's unpack for a second. So
yeah,
where do brands go wrong going to other countries? It's fascinating how Target went up to Canada. So many people cross the border to shop in Target. Well, we should go to Canada. They left. Nordstrom, we're up in the same places that we know our customers are. They left. And you hear stories all the time of, oh, they just didn't get their culture. Is it that simple an explanation?
I mean, sometimes it is. I feel like sometimes it's small little things that make a big difference. Like in China, one of the things that always happened was multi-brand retailers went into China and expected consumers to shop in a multi-brand environment, and they really don't. They're very brand-led. They love single-brand retail. I think it's really about adapting, and it sounds easy and it sounds like a no-brainer, but some of it, the nuances can be as different as kind of what's important to a consumer, to the competitive landscape, to just the way people shop.
Okay. And so you decide you get your MBA.
Got my MBA, moved back to the US, and worked with a bunch of different retailers, and then recently moved over to Portugal. And I think there's really digging into the European landscape now. There's nuances around European retail, which I find fascinating when you compare it to Asia and you compare it to the US. I think some of the things I'm seeing here is a lot more automation. I was in the Brussels airport and I went to duty free the other day, and there's not a single person in it. Everything is self-serve. It's a completely autonomous store, even in the airport. We're seeing a lot more of that in Europe. More self-checkout, more technology-enabled solutions. And then the other thing about Europe that I think is fascinating from retail is the way the regulations kind of lead things. So sustainability, for example, there's a lot more regulations around everything from product materials and chemicals to disposing of products. So within the next year or so, they're going to start requiring barcodes on all products. Like every battery needs to have a barcode so you can track if it's in a landfill or where it went after it was used. So I think in sustainability and some of these other areas, you're seeing a lot of regulation-driven innovation, which is a little different than in the US.
Yeah, I can't imagine us going to that level, but we might. I always think of, and who are we employing to go look through those landfills to find that barcode to scan to
Yeah,
do
that's
something?
where technology is nice to have, right? Nobody wants to be the one doing it.
Exactly. It all sounds good until you get those devils in the details. Well, you've
Exactly.
got the pivotal moment of opening your own streetwear stores. And what's another pivotal moment in just looking around at where we are in retail? Because I think on the one side, we have people who just, was just last year, everybody was screaming, it's all going to be the metaverse. It's all going to be the metaverse. And now it's like, well, maybe not, but it's all going to be AI. It's all going to be generative AI. It's going to kill us all, and it's Skynet's right around the corner, or it's just here to help. So, what are some pivotal moments you're seeing right now? You think that are going to shape the way we, certainly the way we shop, and certainly the experiences we have in stores right now.
I mean, I really do think that generative AI is kind of a game changing technology. I think it's been, you could definitely argue it's been overhyped, which I think it probably has to a certain extent. But that's kind of like saying the internet was overhyped back in back in the day. Like it is overhyped, but it also made a huge impact. So I think that, it's making an impact in small ways and big ways, right? So on the small ways, everything from like product descriptions, writing product descriptions now is AI is very good at that. Emails, marketing copy, marketing images, virtual try on, even things like, the chatbots aren't quite there yet, but I think they're getting really interesting. And we're seeing kind of like almost a hybrid between human sort of oversight plus AI, kind of putting the two together where you can really protect against things. So I think there are some super exciting things, and not to mention, better business decisions, merchandising, supply chain is a huge area to be unlocked, but I think still needs some more time. But then, to your point, there are tons of risks that come with it. It's everything from privacy of your data and being able that you can keep data within the walls of your company, to having things that are dangerous, that are false, that are wrong, that are misleading, that are discriminatory. There's a lot of things that you really do have to have the oversight of the AI to really envision the power. So I think there's a lot of pluses, but there are some watch outs for sure, that I think everyone's kind of just starting to really understand. It's just kind of all happening in real time.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, when I think about my business, both of my associates use chat gpt and stuff to make sure, is this concise enough? Can you reorder this to make sense? Can we, in fact, we'll probably use this for after our podcast to give us our SEO thing for YouTube, because that's not a real value add. That's kind of like, great, somebody can do it better and it's fine. The challenge is, I think, for everybody to understand that you still have to have the thought. You still have to have the right thought in, and to be able to say, how does this work? So, are there any things that you can see how AI is changing the way consumers shop? I mean, AI's been, generative AI. We've had algorithms certainly, but generative AI revolutioning how customers shop. Any insights on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, a couple different things. One is product discovery. So I think, having smarter recommendations around the way you shop. So knowing, one example I heard someone say is, if you never buy a sleeveless shirt, then you're never going to be served a sleeveless shirt when you're looking at things, whether it's from search, whether it's from recommended products, the ability to really understand. And I think one area we're seeing a lot of development in is just analyzing and almost like social listening of what you've been doing in the past. So I think you and I may have talked about this, like when you're looking for a pair of shoes online and you buy that pair of shoes and then you're getting ads served after you bought it, it's annoying. Like it's, you feel like you're being watched, you feel like you're someone seeing, and it's kind of creepy. But if you're able to be a little smarter about it and know, okay, you already bought these shoes, what would you come next? Do you need socks? Do you need, are you going hiking? Are you going on a trip? To have that smarter ability to really see what you're looking for and what your interests are. Now that is helpful and that isn't so much creepy. It's something that's additive to your customer experience. So I think around discovery, recommendations, and even customer service to a certain extent. And the ability of, some of the chatbots are getting pretty good at explaining things, giving you alternatives, recommending things. So I think this ability to help that discovery process when you're online, especially because, and to make it more like the offline experience, because online, one of the challenges with online is it's been more, it's a little bit more challenging to have that discovery and that entertainment value that you get in the store. AI can help with that and make it a little bit more personalized as well.
But when it comes to getting a refund, I can't yell at AI.
You can, I think.
Like,
I did. Chat
they would-
GPT. Chat GPT has yelled at me a couple times with some of the terminology I've used, so they
oh
they
yeah,
don't, they don't take it.
yeah. I hate this thing. It's like, this document's too long. Try again. Like, oh,
Yeah,
that was
I
on
get that a
you.
lot.
Well, I know we were talking about AI had worked with Instacart,
Mhm.
and how that's worked with grocery. Can you kind of like fill us in on those kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think Instacart's a great example of how they're using data in their business. I know they just had their IPO not too long ago, and they had, I forget the exact amount, but a substantial portion of their revenue is actually coming from retail media and retail data. And I think I used Instacart all the time during the pandemic, and I actually got kind of addicted to it even after the pandemic was over, and I was ready to go to stores. I'm like, yeah, it's so easy. It already knows what I want. I can just replicate my order, and it comes to my house really quickly. So I think what was great about it is, I like to drink cold brew and I like a certain kind of cold brew. So it would, when it served me coupons, it was always the exact same type of cold brew I like, without sugar, without milk. It was the same things. It knew what I liked and it was able to serve me very targeted information because it knows what I bought, it knows what I looked at. So I think that ability to take data and to personalize the experience and then honestly to turn around and sell it to all these brands that want information. I think the social media landscape with the cookie apocalypse and all the information about data, retailers are starting to have more data than anybody else, and the ability to mine those insights and then to sell that back to people, both from the point of consumer insights as well as media. That's actually becoming pretty profitable for retailers.
Yeah. Well, they got to find something, right? They tried going after making them all into land grabs, and then people were like, well, the land alone isn't going to make us, so
Yeah.
what else can we do? But you're right, and that's what the I remember years ago saying that Amazon is so concerned with grocery because if I know it's in your grocery cart, I have a really good idea what's going on in the household.
Absolutely.
You're sick, you're this, you're that, you have kids, you don't.
Yeah.
But it does, my thing is, I get it, but it's kind of like little boomer talking here probably, but I remember, like, for example, when I grew up in the 60s, you could have heard on the radio, because that's all we had, was you could heard country or Broadway or hard rock or pop or you name it. It was all out there, and that's what kind of gave us all of our choices as we got older. I just
Yeah.
wonder, as we get more and more tuned by AI, that you like Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton, great, we're going to remix this with something else that sounds almost exactly like it.
Yeah.
And then, if that's the world we're creating, how do you make way for people in that world? Because nobody's like that, Renee, right?
Yeah, I think it's,
Same.
there's a couple things. There was one, I don't know if you ever did this. There was a quiz, I think it was the New York Times or somebody. They did a quiz where they showed you pictures of people's refrigerator, and you were supposed to guess if they were Democrat or Republican based on what was in their refrigerator. And it was kind of a fun quiz, but honestly, I was wrong like 90% of the time. Like, you think you have these ideas about people, and they're not necessarily true. So I think there is, a lot of opportunity for misconception. But on the other hand, I think the way the media has gone, you mentioned radio, or even like when I was growing up, it was like everybody watched Friends, and you had 25 million people watching Friends on Thursday night, and everybody had the same point of reference. Now you look at like, a popular show like Succession, really there's only 1 million people who watch that show. It's really becoming like much narrower audiences. There's so much media, and the way we consume it's gotten so, compartmentalized and siloed that it is harder to make those connections. And I think brands find that too. It's not so easy to do one thing and you hit everybody. You do kind of have to target the message a little bit. And one of the things we talk about in the book is really being inclusive. I think that was one big thing that came out during COVID, whether it's, based on, the color of your skin, your gender, whether it's your political type, whether it's, are you living in the country or the city, this ability to kind of reach all people and be inclusive. Sizing, able-bodied, that's a big thing. Do you have disabilities? All of these areas are something that I think brands are really struggling with, because society has gotten so siloed. It is hard to reach everybody at one time.
Well, and you think about going back, time of Friends, Gap is riding high. Casual Fridays have come in.
Absolutely.
Khakis. Wow, what a concept, right? That was just so innovative. And yet, a mass brand like a Gap, we've piled on for years saying they have no direction. We don't know what they stand for. And then they kind of clone themselves in Old Navy. Um, it would be hard for them to niche down, right? Because it is a broad category. I mean, I think you'd be easier in packaged goods. Coke with vanilla is not that hard of a sell, but Gap is now going to come out with, as they did, sheets at Walmart. Like, what? You're at the same time we're siloing things down. It's harder to break out of that place
Sure.
that you put yourself in. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, except for you look at like, take someone like Amazon who's doing dishes and doing every possible thing you can imagine. That again, it goes back to, I think, the retailer knowing what sells. You look even back at some of the multi-brand retailers like REI and some of these guys, they would start their private label because they knew, hey, this jacket sells well. Why don't I make one that looks like it? So it's almost like it's reverting back. So it's becoming harder for brands to make these leaps and decisions. But for the retailers who are selling everything, the more and more data they have, the more they really can guess what people want.
I love that. And with generative AI, the guess has got to be on a little bit more data. So, we had talked about personalization in retail like a football stadium.
Yeah.
Can you explain that metaphor a little bit for us?
Yeah, we had I was at a conference in Amsterdam, a fintech conference, and they were talking about new types of technology you can use for checkout, for verification, verifying your identity, and they talked about a pilot program that's happening in a football stadium where everything is done by facial recognition. So you don't even need a mobile phone to walk in. You don't need a wallet. You don't need a bag. Everything's done by facial recognition. You go in that way for your ticket. You can pay at the snack bar. And, we talked a little bit about how for some people, for me, I'd love that, frankly, right? Like, I don't need to carry anything. I don't need to worry about it. That's great. Other people, that sounds like a dystopian nightmare, right? The ability for somebody to be following you everywhere, knowing where you are, even though, frankly, a lot of this is happening kind of without our knowledge half of the time anyways.
We don't want to know that though, right?
You don't want to know. So to some people, that's horrifying. And to other people, that's liberating. You don't have to carry anything. So it's like, how do you, and the same thing happens with self-checkout at retailers, right? Some people love that. Other people find it horrifying and annoying and difficult. So, I've seen now, some of the retailers are doing, assisted self-checkout, just walk out, or a cashier. There's different ways, or maybe some it's pay with an app and go out. But having, IKEA is a good example. They have multiple ways you can check out because you're personalizing the experience for the person who wants it. Not everybody wants that same experience. And some people like having as much technology as possible, and some people hate it.
So where do you think we're going to go with privacy? Because it seems, to your point, going back to Europe, they're doing a bigger job than America is. I mean,
Absolutely.
California has got some stringent things they put in place, but the EU is really worried about it. is there going to be a consensus? It's interesting. This is the month that Apple came out with a new iPhone and had to bend to the EU and say, well, I guess we have to get rid of our little lightning port that only we had.
Yes,
So
exactly. Yeah.
it seems like the EU has some muscle.
I think this is one of those areas that it is going to be government dictated, to be honest, because from the company's perspective, there's always going to be a desire to go as far as possible. So another good example is in China, there's facial recognitions everywhere because there's certainly no laws against it. It's used widely, but there's one example of there was an area that was people were using too much toilet paper in the bathroom stalls, and so they had a facial recognition that when you got down, you got like 5 squares, and then it wasn't until the face changed again that you got more squares. It's like that's very intense. I don't think anybody wants that level of like sort of intrusion. But I do think it's one of these things that, it is kind of a public good. And I think it does have to be mandated because without any laws, everyone's going to go as far as you can because there's always somebody who wants it. There's always somebody who'll buy it. So I do think this is one of those areas. And the same with sustainability to a certain extent. Some of these they're public, kind of like public goods that are not, there's not a profit motive for anybody to follow it. So it's almost like this is where the collective good needs to come in. So I do think privacy is one of those where, and just like with cars in the US, if California is the most stringent, then the rest of the country usually has to follow, right? Just like emissions and car, restrictions. So everyone's going to have to follow, I think, the most stringent, and maybe sometimes, things like Europe will filter back to America. But personally as a consumer, I love the fact that the EU is making, Apple, I don't need 20 different charging cords for my Apple products, like that is kind of a nice thing for me to have, but I can see why if you're Apple, it's nice to sell a bunch of other extra cords.
I love that. All right. Well, great. Before we continue, we love our loyal listeners. We're going to take a little break, and I'd appreciate it if you'd do me a favor and give us a 5-star review wherever you're listening to this episode. And we'll return after this word from SalesRx Online Retail Sales Training. Hey, it's Bob again. I'm not only your host, but also the founder of the SalesRx Online Retail Sales Training Program. How many sales that should have been yours walked out your front doors today? With shoppers being more discerning about where and when they shop, you need to convert more lookers to buyers. And SalesRx is the perfect solution to make training memorable. It's bite-sized, it can fit easily into your schedules. Don't tell me you don't have time to train. If you can give them time to take a break, you have time for them to train. Now, the training builds from some of the quickest ways to engage shoppers to the most advanced. Everything is planned so you can implement your sales training program with a click of a button. And there's a reason we're on 4 continents training thousands, because SalesRx is scalable. Everybody learns the same new skills that will grow your sales. In fact, 83% of users report a double-digit increase in their sales within 6 months. Wouldn't you like that to be your story? Visit SalesRx to learn more and set up a call with me to see how we can help. That's SalesRx.com. Now back to the broadcast. And we're back with Renee Hartmann, author of Next Generation Retail, How to Use New Technology to Innovate for the Future. So what key takeaways from your book, Next Generation Retail, should retailers adopt right now? What's something like you're ringing the bell, like, are you listening or you're shaking them up?
I mean, I think for retailers, the message that we always give them is, start simple and just start and do something. I think retailers suffer a lot from kind of, paralysis by analysis or analysis by paralysis. I forget which one, but the idea of it's not, when you really get down to it, technology innovation is not the main business of any retailer. And sometimes it's seen as kind of this annoyance. It's something else I'm going to have to do. We need to spend more time looking at it. So I think, one thing we always talk to companies about is, try a pilot program. It doesn't always have to be, you're going to roll out everything around every single store, but try something, start small, and then build on that success, and then bring that throughout the organization. So I think, people wait a long time, and by the time they wait, they've sort of missed some of the opportunities with some of these new technologies. So, one good example is live streaming. Live stream shopping is one that we talk about in the book. And it's super easy to do. You literally could just have your store staff, use their mobile phone and start streaming out to their own customers. You can even just be doing it to your own customers. And we're seeing retailers, really increase their sales within the store by just having their store staff go online and start broadcasting out. That takes almost no cost. You don't need a studio. You don't need a lot of talent. Those are kind of some easy wins that really, what's the harm in trying? Give it a try, pilot things out and see how they work. And there's a lot of examples like that don't have to be huge investments, reworking your entire systems, but they're just small ways to get started.
Well, when you talk about reworking systems, I'm reminded of our call earlier. We were talking about technological barriers and how that might be generation based. And one of the things we had talked about is how the frontline younger worker is having to help older generations, which is very different than certainly when I was in retail many years ago, the challenge I've got. So how do you address that? And maybe you could take us into what the problem is.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's a good example. I think of, a lot of these big retailers, like take a grocery store, you have the frontline staff who are working sometimes with an older customer, sometimes with just someone who's not that tech savvy, and they've got to show them, how do you download the app? How do you scan it? How do you pay? What do you use to get through the process? And they're kind of becoming like a tech support without really their permission. That's not what they were hired to do. As anyone who's ever been, taught, especially, I have my own 14 and 12-year-old kids. Anytime they ever teach me new technology, there's always a lot of exasperation on both sides. And I think it's the same thing in the retail experience. So it's not necessarily what somebody wants to do is come in. They just want to pay for their stuff and get out. They don't want a tech lesson, right? So I think what ends up happening is you do kind of, sometimes the staff itself is resistant to the technology changes because they're the ones who have to deal with the customer, right? So I think this ability, like we talked about, of giving different choices and providing ways that the customer can understand it without it all having to be one-on-one training, whether it's signage, whether it's incentives, download the app for coupons or things that you feel like you're getting something out of it, versus just this like one more step you have to do. It can erode the customer experience to a certain extent because they get annoyed and your staff is annoyed too. So that's, I think, a good reason why retailers sometimes are hesitant to put new technology out, which I understand. If it's causing too many barriers, maybe it's not worth it. And that's why I think pilot programs are a good example. And then the other thing is just really involving your store staff in the decisions and in the technology rollout. It's not just something that's handed to them and they do. It's involving them in the process and learning from them and getting their input ahead of time. So it's not just, one more thing they need to do that they don't want to do.
Yeah, because it's adding friction to everybody's day.
Yeah.
You chose the Starbucks app because you liked how efficient it is. I'm the same way. It's like I was always like, what a stupid thing. Why would I want to pay on the Starbucks app? I got my cash and my credit card.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, they got their little games I play every now and then, or my little points, and it does all those surprise and delight your customer in a pretty seamless way. And then ordering it online, ordering it and then having it. And when I'm at an airport and I see 60 people, and I just order it from there, and there's real time saving there.
Absolutely. And that's a real value. Like to someone, I think I was telling you, I'm kind of a coffee snob. So for the longest time, I didn't even want to go to Starbucks. I wanted to go to the cool, local coffee shop. But now I go to Starbucks all the time simply because of that. I don't want to wait 20 minutes. I can do it ahead of time. Typically, by the time I get there, it's ready. It's a very good customer experience. So I think, it goes back to what does the customer want? And in that situation, the customer does not want to wait, and this solves that problem and makes it really frictionless. And the first time you had to do it, it was an annoying thing to do, to buy the gift card, to go through the whole process. But once you got it, it's pretty easy now. So I think there is a little bit of a barrier. That first time probably was hard to get us to do it. But then once we learned the benefit and saw the utility of it, you keep using it.
Nice. Maybe it'll be when we have flying cars. I'm hoping. So looking forward, what excites you as we come to the close of our time together? Looking forward, what excites you most about the future of retail?
I mean, I have to say, I think there's, a couple things. One, I think the idea of more of the omni-channel experience, I think this has been something we've been talking about for 10, 20 years. I think it is becoming more of a reality now. And some of it is through like really small things that the pandemic brought. So like QR codes. QR code is a great gateway between online and offline. It's a simple way you can scan something and you can get access to alternative reality. You can get access to apps. You can do all kinds of pay. So this ability to just kind of bridge seamlessly between online and offline, I think, is something that will really enable a lot of really cool things to happen, whether that's, things that are happening in the virtual world or in the physical world. This ability to kind of link those two experiences and have it happen seamlessly. So you could be getting targeted, recipe suggestions when you're in a certain grocery aisle. You could be getting, you could filter for, you have celiac disease, and it's putting recommendations in for you. So this ability to kind of really have that real omni-channel experience, we're not quite there yet, but this ability to provide you information that as you're going through the retail experience, you're having something that's additive to the experience, and not just walking through and doing an errand. And I think that one of the things the pandemic taught me a lot was the idea that being in retail, it's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be a discovery process. It's supposed to be, and I really felt that after I didn't go, indoors for almost a year, I think, during the pandemic. And then when I finally did, going shopping it just seemed like such a breath of fresh air, like discover things and pull them off the shelves, and to really experience that again when I had been doing everything online, which is click, 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 here's what I want. So it's less of an errand and more of an experience. And I think that omni-channel will make it a little more that way. There's lots of other ways to do it, but I think that is one key that could really crack the code. Nice.
So before we go, name of the podcast is Tell Me Something Good About Retail. So this is your moment. Tell me something good about retail, Renee.
That's the hardest question you've given me. I think the good thing about retail is it's always changing. I think it's very... it's local to a certain extent, in that it changes everywhere you go. So you really do have different experiences. But to the same extent, I think it's always modernizing and trying new things. So I think that the changeability of retail, I think, is what's so exciting about it.
Sweet. Well, I appreciate you joining us today. And your book, Next Generation Retail, it is out now, How to Use Technology and Innovate for the Future. And thanks for your insights, and we'll see you in the future.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Renee.
You've been listening to Tell Me Something Good About Retail with Bob Phibbs, the Retail Doctor. As a listener, you can receive free information and guides when you visit retaildoc.com and sign up for our exclusive weekly newsletter. Thanks for being with us. Remember to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you like to get your podcasts. To virtually bring Bob to all of your crew and associates, check out www.salesrx.com.